Today class we will discuss about post mapping, put mapping and delete mapping. We already discussed about how to get mapping, how to retrieve one bean, how to retrieve list of beans, what is at the rate request param, what is at the rate path variable, and what is at the rate what is query parameters. We already discussed about some main annotations. In today class again we will discuss about we will discuss about post mapping, put mapping and delete mapping. Okay, so before going to the I need to once recolor the all the annotations which are discussed in above in yesterday class. See here I discussed at the rate rest control annotation. Are you able to see my screen, Krishna? Okay,
Yeah,
so
bro.
correct, at the rate rest control means it is the combination of at the rate controller and at the rate responsibility response body annotation. Okay, so when you annotated a class with at the rate rest controller, that means inside this rest controller it contains two two annotations. One is at the rate controller and another is at the rate response body. See, from Spring 4.0 introduced at the rate rest control annotation, a specialized version of the at the rate controller, which is convenience annotation that does nothing more than adding the at the rate controller and at the rate response body annotations. Okay. In order to create RESTful web services using Spring MVC, you need to annotate a Java class with at the rate rest control annotation. Okay, in before we are annotated a class with at the rate control annotation to make the class is Spring MVC class. Okay, but after Spring 4.0 version onwards, just we need to annotate the class with at the rate rest controller. Okay, then the class is a Spring MVC class, and this REST control annotation internally it have two annotations, that is at the rate controller and at the rate response body. Okay, so what is at the rate response body annotation means? See, it tells a controller that the returned is automatically serialized into JSON and passed back into the HTTP response object. See, the at the rate response body annotation tells a controller that the object returned is automatically serialized into JSON and passed back into the HTTP response object. When you use the at the rate response body annotation on a method, Spring uses HTTP message converters to convert the value based on to convert the return value based on MIME types and return it to the HTTP response automatically. What is at the rate response body annotation means? It converts JSON object into Java object. Okay, it internally uses HTTP converters. So it by using that HTTP converters, it converts JSON object into Java objects. Okay, this is at the rate response body. And next annotation is at the rate request mapping annotation. At the request mapping annotation is the most common and widely used annotation in Spring MVC. It is used to map web request onto specific handler classes or handler methods. Okay. Request mapping I will tell in example. So we already discussed about what is at the rate get mapping and what is at the rate post mapping, what is at the rate request body annotation, and what is at the rate put mapping and what is at the rate delete mapping. We already in yesterday class we discussed about these all annotations. So what is at the rate path variable Krishna? What is at the rate path variable annotation? So path variable annotation is nothing but a, see here we need to understand two terminologies. One is method argument and another thing is you are a template variable. Okay, you are a template variable. So whatever you wrote inside the beside the get mapping, that is you are a template variable. Okay, you are a template variable. So in path variable annotation we need to bind both you are a template variable and method argument. Okay, we need to bind both you are a template variable and method argument. This is called path variable annotation. అంటే ఇక్కడ ఏంటంటే అట్ ది రేట్ పాత్ వేరియబుల్ మనం ఈ మెథడ్ ఆర్గ్యుమెంట్లో ఇచ్చింది ఈ యూఆర్ఏ టెంప్లెట్ వేరియబుల్ యూనిఫామ్ రిసోర్స్ ఐడెంటిఫై. ఓకే, ఈ యూనిఫామ్ రిసోర్స్ ఐడెంటిఫై వేరియబుల్ ఇచ్చింది, ఈ రెండింటిని బైండ్ చేస్తుంది పాత్ వేరియబుల్. బైండ్ చేసి మనకి అవుట్పుట్ అనేది జనరేట్ అయ్యేలా చేస్తుంది. నెక్స్ట్ రిక్వెస్ట్ param annotations. What is the use of request param annotations? The use of request param annotations is which is used to extract parameters. Okay, extract query parameters, form parameters and even files from the request. Okay, by using at the rate request parameters request param to extract query parameters, form parameters and even files from the request. What is query parameters? Query parameters is nothing but a query parameter start with question mark and each query parameter separated with and symbol. Okay, query parameter start with question mark and each query parameter separated with end column. See, for example, are you able to see my notepad screen? http localhost 8080 API query at the rate id equal to 1. This is which type of parameter, Krishna? It is query parameters or path parameter? Krishna, Rajesh, which type of parameter it is? Query parameters. Correct, it is a query parameters. Why? Because the query parameters always start with question mark and name equal to, see, this is also query parameters. Why? Because in this query parameters start with question mark and separated with n symbol. Okay, start with question mark and separated with n symbol. Okay, next http localhost #8080 API 1. It is which type of parameters? It is a path param. Okay, it is a path param. Path param doesn't contain this query parameters. Okay, here what is the difference between path param and query parameters means? See, to send both are used for same purpose, to send data from client to server, but in query parameters it represent data in key value pairs. For example, see, id is the key. Okay, here id is the key and 1 is the value. Okay, name is the key and Surya is the value. So see, it represents data in key value pairs, and in path parameter we will send values directly in URL. See, ఇక్కడ చూడండి 1 after 1 Surya. Here this is a path parameter. That means we are sending values directly. Next, it should represent only at the end of the URL. Okay, query parameters always represent end of the URL. Okay, end of the URL, but it can represent anywhere in the URL. Okay, it can represent anywhere in the URL. It started with question mark and separated with n symbol. Okay, it started with question mark and separated with n symbol. Here to separate path param we will use slash. See, we will use slash. URI template should represent with param. Path parameter is used to read. Both query parameters and path parameters both are used to read purpose. Okay. See how to send data server in get request. Okay, how to send data server in get request. That means once a client send request, how to send data to server. Okay, how to send data to server by using in get request. To send data in get request we can use below things. One is @query parameters and second one is @path parameters. Okay, try to note these things, these points. Okay, for interview purpose these points are very important, so try to note these points. So how to send data to server in get request means in two ways. First one is query parameters, second one is path parameters. Query parameters and path parameters will be present in URL. Okay, query parameters and path parameters will be present in URL. See, query parameters are used to send data from client to server in URL. Path parameter also used to send data from client to server in URL. Query parameters will represent data in key value pair format. Okay, query parameters will represent data in key value pair format. Query parameter should present only at the end of the URL. See, this is the best example. http www.grass.com student. Here the query parameter starts from query parameters will should present only at the end of the URL. Here the query parameters is this. Okay, why? Because the query parameters always start with question mark and separated with n symbol. To read query parameters in resource method we will use @request param annotation. Okay, to use query parameter in resource method we will use @request param annotation. Okay, we will use @request param annotation. When we are using @request param annotation, query parameters are mandatory in URL to access resource. When you are using @request param, okay, when you are using @request param, then this query parameters are mandatory in URL to access resource. Okay, when you want to use query parameters in URL, then we need to give @request param in method arguments. Okay, we need to give @request param in method arguments. When you give @request param in method annotation, then it's mandatory to give query parameters in URL. Okay, next path parameters. Path parameters are called as URI parameters. This is called as both. Path parameters are called as URI parameters. It is present in URL. Okay, next path parameters are used to send data from client to server in URL. Path parameter can present anywhere in URL. See, to read path parameters in REST controller we use @path variable annotation. What is the use of @path variable annotation? Which is used to bind the చెప్పండి, which is used to bind the URL and correct method argument and URI template variable. Okay, method argument and URI template variable. This is all about how to retrieve data by using get mapping. Okay, how to retrieve data by using get mapping. Next, so Krishna, are you able to understand? What is request param? How in how many ways we can retrieve data?
In two ways, brother.
Okay, and two ways, correct. What are they?
Um, Query parameters, path parameter.
Correct, query parameters and path parameters. Okay, now I will give example. Okay, Spring Boot REST API that handles HTTP request post. Okay, what is at the rate post mapping? Post mapping is nothing but we are create the resource. Okay, we are create the resource. See, create a resource. Get mapping means we are retrieving data from database. Put mapping means we are update the resource. Delete mapping means we can delete the resource. These are the four important HTTP methods. Okay, these are the four important HTTP methods. Other than this, we have some more methods, that is patch, trace, other. There are some more methods are there. So, but these are the most used HTTP methods. Okay, I already completed get mapping. In today class, I will discuss how to retrieve, how to create Spring Boot REST API that handles HTTP request post. Okay, and by using put, how to create HTTP put method, and how to delete by using HTTP delete mapping. Okay, in today class, we will discuss these three things. Okay. In tomorrow class, I will explain from scratch. I will take 3 hours class. Okay, I will take 3 hours class. I will explain. In today class, I will explain. Tomorrow class, sorry. In tomorrow class, I will once again I will explain what is get mapping, and I will just guide you. You only do the course. You only do the code. Okay. నేను జస్ట్ గైడ్ చేస్తాను. ఆ గైడ్ చేసిన తర్వాత మీరే కోడ్ అనేది, పర్టికులర్ కోడ్ అనేది గెట్ మ్యాపింగ్ యూజ్ చేస్తూ, పుట్ మ్యాపింగ్ యూజ్ చేస్తూ, పోస్ట్ మ్యాపింగ్ యూజ్ చేస్తూ మీరే చేయాలి. ఓకే, సో మళ్ళీ స్టార్టింగ్ నుండి 3 hours క్లాస్ తీసుకొని చెప్తాను. ఓకే. Sorry, Krishna. So now we will discuss about get map. See, yesterday we discussed about get mapping, how to retrieve single bean, how to retrieve list of beans, how to retrieve by using path variable. See, this is the path variable, this is method argument, and this is URI template variable. The path variable is used to bind these two things, URI template variable and method argument. Okay, this is request parameters. So when you want to use query parameters at the time only చేసాం కదా. Okay, when you want to use query parameters at the time only we need to use at the rate request param. Okay, next, so now I will tell about post mapping. Okay, now I will tell about post mapping first. Krishna, are you clear about all these get mappings, or you have any doubt?
Can you explain once again, brother? That?
Get mapping, huh?
Yeah, brother.
Okay. See, see, public, this is the return type of the class. Okay, this is the return type of the class, and employee controller is the method name. Okay, for example, if you want to retrieve if you want to retrieve single bean, for example, if you want to retrieve this one bean, this one Rajesh Kumar, this is the single bean, right? If you want to retrieve this single bean, simply you need to create an object and pass the values. Okay, create an object and pass ID, first name, last name, ID, first name, last name. See, in this entity class we create three fields. One is ID, first name, last name. Okay, so in that, inside this control class, see, inside the control class we create one object and pass the values. One Rajesh Kumar. See, for example, one Krishna, last name is Krishna Kumar. Krishna Kumar. This is the ID, first name and last name. Okay, this is the ID, first name and last name. Like this we create. Like this we create an object and pass the values. So when you run this,
స్టాటిక్ అనే వర్డ్ యూజ్ ఉండదు దీంట్లో.
ఉంటుంది కానీ ఇప్పుడు ఒక తర్వాత చెప్తా, ఇంకా డెప్త్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్స్ ఇచ్చేటప్పుడు. దిస్ ఈస్ ద URL ఆఫ్ ద పర్టికులర్ కోడ్. Control copy, Krishna, ID first one, first name Krishna and second name Kumar. Okay, like this we retrieve single data. For example, if you want to retrieve multiple data, see, that time if you want to retrieve list of data means we need to give return type is list of employees. Okay, we need to give return type is list of employees. This is the return type, and get employees is the method name. Get employees is the method name. We need to create an object, and by using that object we need to pass this values: ID, first name, last name, ID, first name, last name, ID, first name, last name. So here I'm added four values. So when you run this code, out of these four values you want to retrieve first value. అమ్మ మళ్ళీ చేస్తున్నావు. అమ్మ మళ్ళీ చేస్తున్నావు. HTTP localhost 8080 employees 1 వస్తుంది.
వచ్చిన డాక్యుమెంట్ అనేది URL కు కన్వర్ట్ అవుతుంది ఇక్కడ
కరెక్ట్.
రన్ చేసిన తర్వాత దాన్ని మనము ఇక్కడ బ్రౌజర్ లో చెక్
చేసుకోవాలి. ఇక్కడ చూడండి పోర్ట్ నెంబర్ అనేది 8087 మీద రన్ అవుతుంది. రన్ అయిన తర్వాత ఏపీఐ అనేది రిక్వెస్ట్ మ్యాపింగ్ లో ఏపీఐ అని ఇచ్చాం. ఎంప్లాయీస్ వి వాంట్ టు రిట్రీవ్ 1 ఏంటి ఇలా వస్తుంది. HTTP localhost port run on 8087 TP not found. See, if you want to retrieve a list of data, then we use list employee is the return type. ఇక్కడ చూడండి, here we are using list of employees. If you want to retrieve a list of employees, here we need to give list employees, and here get employees is the method name. We are using get mapping HTTP method, and we gave 4 data types. We need to create an object, and by using that object we pass four values, and we return that object, return employee. Then we will be able to retrieve these 4 objects. Okay, we are able to retrieve 4 objects. Next, how to, by using path variable, how to retrieve data. See, here public employee is the return type, employee path variable is the parameter method name, and we pass 2 variables. Sorry, inside these parameters we pass 3 method arguments. One is int id, string first name, string last name. See, I want to bind this method argument to this URI template variable. Okay, I want to bind this method argument to URI template variable. Then we will use like this, at the rate id, at the rate first name. Then see, hello. In this, see, what is the use of path variable, Krishna? The path variable is used to bind this method argument. Okay, they bind this method argument and this URI template variable. Okay, not only this, if you want to bind this last name, then we need to give shift at the rate path variable, then slash last name. See, we are binding 3 variables. Okay, one is id, first name, last name. We are binding 3 variables. Method argument, this is the URI template variable, and this is the method variables. Okay, method variables. Here we are binding 3 method variables to 3 URI template variables. See, when I run this code, employee one, copy, one, First name is Nagarjuna. Second name is Akkineni. The new employee. ID, first name, ID, comma, first name, comma, last name. Now you run the code. One Nagarjuna Akkineni. By using path variable, we retrieve data. For example, if you want to change the data, one Venkatesh, last name is Daggupati. Venkatesh Daggupati. By using path variable, this is the we can retrieve data. Next, by using query parameters. See, employee is the return type, employee request param is the method name. When you want to use query parameters, we need to give request param. Okay, we need to give request param annotation. See, query parameters start with question mark and separate with ID. Separate with M symbol. Query parameters into ID request param. ID and apps and first name equal to Surya and last name equal to last name equal to Karthi. By using query parameters, we send data to server like this. Okay, by using query parameters, we send data like this. We send data like this. So Krishna, now you are able to understand how to retrieve data in a single bin, how to retrieve a list of data, how to retrieve path, how to retrieve data by using path variables, how to retrieve data by using request param and direct query parameters.
Yeah, brother.
దీని ఏది ఇందులో
ఇందులో మనం బీన్ యూజ్ చేయట్లేదు, ఆల్రెడీ జావా కాన్ఫిగరేషన్స్ లో యూజ్ చేసాం. సో చూడు, దీన్ని కూడా కొన్ని దగ్గరలో. సో బీన్ అంటే సింపుల్ గా ఆబ్జెక్ట్. ఇన్ స్ప్రింగ్ బూట్ లో కొన్నిసార్లు ఈ టెర్మినాలజీ లిస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఎంప్లాయీస్ ఈఎంపీ ఉంది కదా, దీన్ని బీన్ అని అంటారు. సింపుల్ జావా ఆబ్జెక్ట్ బీన్ అంటే. కృష్ణ, ఆర్ ఏబుల్ టు అండర్స్టాండ్ ఆర్ యూ హ్యావ్ ఎనీ డౌట్?
No, brother.
No, once you practice or attend tomorrow class. In tomorrow class, I will discuss from scratch onwards all annotations. I will just guide you. You only do enter code. Okay.
Okay.
In today class, we will discuss about remaining mappings. That is post mapping, put mapping, and delete mapping. Okay. So post mapping is also very simple. First, public modifier. Next, we need to give return type. Return type is employee. Next, method name is create employee. Create employee is the method name. You need to pass arguments employee. Next, what we need to do? Already we created 3 fields. One is ID, first name, last name. Already we created 3 fields, first name, last name, ID. Now we need to retrieve the 3 fields. We need to retrieve that 3 fields. This out. Next, employee dot out employee dot get ID. Get ID. Okay. Same. South employee dot get first name. Out employee dot get last name. So employee dot get last name. These are the 3 fields. Now we need to use @request body. We need to use @request body. What is the use of @request body? Which is used to, it internally contains HTTP message converters, which is used to convert JSON object to Java object, which is used to convert JSON object to Java object. To create a resource, which mapping we need to use? Post mapping. Post mapping. Here the URI is create. Here the URL is create. Okay. Next, we need to use response status. Response status dot http status created. See, like this we create an object. The response status is nothing but a response status. It gives the output. Okay, once we create, for example, it gives a response status. We have a HTTP status course there, right? 400, 300 redirectional, 400 for not found, 200 created, 201 200 successful, 201 created. So like that we have many HTTP status codes there, right? So your response status is nothing but a server send response. Okay, server send response by using this response status annotation. Okay, server send response by using this response status annotation. We need to give that response status created. Once the method is once the method executed correctly, then it will print return employee. Okay. Now what is the URL? Your URL is http localhost 8087 next API. Why here I am writing API means in the first class this employee control is the class of this employee control is the class. Okay, in this class we denotated with 2 annotations. One is @rest controller and another one is @request mapping annotation. Once observe this request mapping annotation, inside this request mapping annotation we create one URL that is /API and employees. సో దీని అర్థం ఏంటంటే, సో ప్రతి మెథడ్లో ఓకే ప్రతి మ్యాపింగ్లో మనం ఏపీఐ ఎంప్లాయీస్ అని ప్రతి మ్యాపింగ్లో యూజ్ చేసే బదులు ఒకసారి ఇక్కడ యూజ్ చేస్తే, ఒకసారి ఈ క్లాస్ లెవెల్లో మనం రిక్వెస్ట్ మ్యాపింగ్ ఏపీఐ ఎంప్లాయీస్ అని యూజ్ చేస్తే నెక్స్ట్ ప్రతి హెచ్టిటిపి మెథడ్లో కూడా యూజ్ చేయవలసిన అవసరం లేదు. ఓకే, we don't need to use every HTTP method. Once we annotated with @request mapping API employees, this API employees అనేది ప్రతి మెథడ్ కి యాక్సెస్ ప్రతి మెథడ్ కి ఇది అవుతుంది. ఓకే, ప్రతి మెథడ్ ని కూడా applicable అవుతుంది. Okay, once you annotated the class with at the request mapping and you give some URLs, this URLs will applicable for each and every method. Okay, every time we no need to give API employees, just we need to give create. Now the API employees create, this is my URL, okay. చెప్పు.
మనం కొత్త క్లాస్ క్రియేట్ చేసాము
ఇక్కడ కొత్త క్లాస్ కాదు, మొన్నటి నుండి ఉండేదే. క్రియేట్
పైన మనం ఆల్రెడీ API ఇచ్చాము.
ఇది మెథడ్, ఇది దీస్ ఆల్ ఆర్ మెథడ్స్. ఓకే, పబ్లిక్, రిటర్న్ టైప్ అండ్ మెథడ్. సి క్లాస్ అంటే ఇది public class employee controller, this is the class. Once the class is annotated with at the rate request mapping and it is the URL, this URL is applicable for each and every method. Okay, this URL is applicable for each and every method. See, once observe all the URLs. See, API employees query 7, that means this API employees. See, this request mapping here in this class is annotated with request mapping and we give some URLs, that is /API/employees. That means this request mapping URL, this URL is applicable for each and every method. Okay, Krishna, once observe this code, this URL is applicable for each and every method. Okay, అంటే ఒకసారి మనం రిక్వెస్ట్ మ్యాపింగ్ /API/employees అని క్రియేట్ రిక్వెస్ట్ URL ఇస్తే, ఈ URL అనేది, ఈ రిక్వెస్ట్ మ్యాపింగ్ లో ఇచ్చిన URL అనేది ప్రతి మెథడ్ లో, ఓకే, ఈ రిక్వెస్ట్ మ్యాపింగ్ లో ఇచ్చిన URL ప్రతి మెథడ్ కి అప్లికేబుల్ అవుతుంది. ఓకే, ఇక్కడ చూడండి, ఈ URL చూస్తే ఇఫ్ యూ వాంట్ టు రిట్రీవ్ సింగిల్ బీన్ దెన్ API employee. If you want to retrieve list of beans, API employees 1. If you want to retrieve by using path variable, then API employees 1. See, that means this API employees URL is applicable for each and every method. Okay, అంటే దీన్ని ఎందుకు యూజ్ చేస్తారంటే, ఇన్స్టెడ్ ఆఫ్ గివింగ్ ఎవ్రీ టైమ్ API employees, instead of giving every method, if you give once you in, if you give for to this class level, then this URL is applicable for each and every method. No need to give to all these HTTP methods. Okay,
మనం ఇంకో మెథడ్ క్రియేట్ చేస్తున్నాం.
ఇప్పుడు క్లాస్ లో మనం ఇక్కడ 4 మెథడ్స్ క్రియేట్ చేసాం కదా. ఇదొక మెథడ్, ఇదొక మెథడ్, ఇదొక మెథడ్, ఇదొక మెథడ్, ఇది క్రియేట్ మెథడ్. సో ఇది. సో ఇప్పుడు చూడండి, కంట్రోల్ కాపీ, పోస్ట్ మ్యాన్ ఓపెన్ చేయండి. Select post. Why? Because we are creating a resource. Okay, and inside that select body and select raw, select the data return type. Okay, that means in which format you need output. For example, you want output as a JSON format, select JSON. What are the three fields? ID 1, next first name, Surya, next last name, next last name is Karthi. Beautiful. Send. Run this code. See, the port run on 8087. Save. Post. http/localhost 8087 API employees. Next one is create. Click on send. See, 4 not found. http/API employees. Capital C. Here we need to create capital C. C. ID 1, first name Surya, last name Karthi. Okay. So one data we successfully created. See, here we apply 201 created. How we get this 201 created? Here we are using response status http status dot created. Okay, when you created any data, then it will return 201 created. Okay, next this is the post mapping. Next put mapping. I want to update my data. Okay, I want to update my data. For example, in this we have one data. I want to update this Surya to Vikram. Okay, I want the update this data Surya to Vikram and Karthi to I. Then what we need to do? Same. Public student is the return type. Student. Employee is the return type. Update student. Update student. Next inside that student we pass student a parameter. Student for the employee. Employee. Next employee. Comma. Employee ID. Based on employee ID, I want to update the data. Okay, based on employee ID, I want to update the data. Then what we need to do? We need to use @request body. Request body. @request body. Now see, simple. Sysert. What is the use of @request body? Inside request body, we have HTTP converters, HTTP message converters. By using HTTP message converters, we convert JSON object. By default, it give data in JSON format. Okay, in JSON format. JSON format is nothing but this format. Okay, the value is in key value format. Key value format. So internally, by default, the request body annotation give data in JSON format. But it internally have HTTP message converters. The message converters will use to convert JSON object to Java object. JSON object to Java object. Okay. Inside @request body annotation, we have HTTP message converters. HTTP message converters convert JSON object to Java object. JSON object to Java object. Simply, we need to use @put mapping. @put mapping and /update. Based on ID, we will update the data, right? Update/ID. Okay. See, here based on ID, we will update the data. Here, what is the URL? Here URL is http localhost 8087 API employees. I want to update one data. ID number 1. I want to update first data. So just copy this URL. Control copy. Run this code. Missing return statement. That means return employee. Return employee. Now run this code. So it will execute it correctly. Okay, go to postman. See, now the main user, what is the main use of put mapping? Change the method name post to put. Update, which id I want to update? Id number 1. So id number 1 from Surya to Vikram, Karthi to Chian. Okay,
ఒకసారి బ్యాక్ వస్తాను.
okay, send this. See, bad request, something I missed. Update id.
అంటే పోస్ట్ మ్యాన్ లో మనం ఎడిట్ చేసుకోవచ్చు.
పోస్ట్ మ్యాన్ ఇస్ ద అవర్ క్లయింట్. ఓకే, అంటే ఈ పోస్ట్ మ్యాన్ లో ఏంటవుతుందంటే మనం క్లయింట్ వి సెండ్ డాట్ క్లయింట్ సెండ్, దిస్ ఇస్ ద క్లయింట్. ఓకే, క్లయింట్ సెండ్ డాటా టు సర్వర్. ఓకే, సో చూడు ఇక్కడ ఏంటంటే మనం ఈ డాటాని సర్వర్ కి పంపిస్తున్నాం. సెండ్ క్లోకి సర్వర్ కి వెళ్తుంది. ఆ సర్వర్ అనేది ఈ డాటా 400 బ్యాడ్ రిక్వెస్ట్
నేమ్స్ చేంజ్ చేసాం కదా, అంటే అక్కడ ఉన్న వాల్యూస్ ఇక్కడ చేంజ్ చేస్తున్నాను మనం.
ఇక్కడ మనం ఇక్కడ ఇచ్చాం కదా గెట్ ఐడి, గెట్ ఫస్ట్ నేమ్, లాస్ట్ నేమ్ అనేది. ఇనిషియల్ గా పోస్ట్ లో మనం ఏం క్రియేట్ చేసాం? 1 సూర్య, కార్తి ఇచ్చాం. బట్ ఇన్ పుట్ మ్యాపింగ్ అంటే ఏంటి? అప్డేట్ చేసుకోవాలి. ఐ వాంట్ టు అప్డేట్ ది ఓల్డ్ డాటా ఇంటూ న్యూ డాటా. దెన్ ఇక్కడ ఏంటి? పోస్ట్ మ్యాపింగ్ నుండి పుట్ మ్యాపింగ్ చేశా. HTTP లోకల్ హోస్ట్. సో అలాగే దిస్ ఈస్ ద క్లయింట్. క్లయింట్ సెండ్ డాటా టు ది సర్వర్. ఇదేంటంటే సర్వర్ రెస్పాన్స్. దిస్ ఈస్ ద సర్వర్ రెస్పాన్స్. దిస్ ఈస్ ద క్లయింట్. వెన్ ద క్లయింట్ సెండ్ ద డేటా దెన్ సర్వర్ ప్రొవైడ్ ది రెస్పాన్స్. సి ఇది ఏంటంటే ఏదో ఒక ఇది చూపించింది, మిస్టేక్ చూపింది. HTTP ఎంప్లాయీస్ ఏదో అని. రిటర్న్ ఎంప్లాయీ. సో ఇది ఎందుకు చూపించిందంటే వి నీడ్ టు యూజ్ పాత్ వేరియబుల్. ఇక్కడ ఏంటంటే path variable యూజ్ చేయాలి. path variable, see here in URI we have ID, but in this we have employee ID. Both are not same. See URI లో ID అని ఉంది, ఇక్కడ employee ID అని ఉంది. Okay, in this URI, in this method URI template variable it has a ID, but in this method argument variable it has a employee ID. Both are not same. So at the time what we need to do? We need to bind like this ID. Now both URI template variable and this path variable ID both are same. Now it will execute. So port run on 8087. Then we will update from Surya first name, Karthi last name to Vikram Chian. Internal server. Hello. Update ID. Update. Int employee ID. See, ID1 Vikram Chian. Initially it is Surya Karthi. I updated Vikram Chian. Surya to Vikram and Karthi to Chian. So this is the put mapping. Next, delete mapping. Delete mapping is also very simple. Public return type is wide. Why? Because we are simply delete the data. Next, delete employee. Delete employee. Return employee data deleted successfully. Employee data deleted successfully. ID at the rate delete mapping. At the rate delete mapping. See here wide, here we need to, here we are passing the data string. Okay, then string delete employee. See, now the error gone. Now shift at the rate path variable into id. Delete slash id int employee id. Employee id path variable id. When ఈ పాత్ వేరియబుల్లో ఐడి అని ఎప్పుడు ఇస్తామంటే బోత్ యూఆర్ఐ టెంప్లెట్ వేరియబుల్ అండ్ మెథడ్ ఆర్గ్యుమెంట్ డిఫరెంట్ ఉంటాయి. ఇక్కడ మనం హియర్ మెథడ్ ఆర్గ్యుమెంట్ ఇస్ ఎంప్లాయ్ ఐడి. డిలీట్ మ్యాపింగ్ లో యూఆర్ఐ టెంప్లెట్ వేరియబుల్ ఐడి అని ఉంది. సో ఎట్ ద టైమ్ వి విల్ యూస్ @id. ఓకే, ఎట్ ద టైమ్ ఈ పాత్ వేరియబుల్ లో ఐడి అని మెన్షన్ చేస్తాం. ఓకే, నెక్స్ట్ after put delete 808 నేను ఎంప్లాయ్ delete 1 ఇది వర్క్ అవ్వట్లేదు. ఎంప్లాయ్ ఐడి int cursor int employee. చూడండి, ఎంప్లాయీ డాటా డిలీటెడ్ సక్సెస్ఫుల్లీ. ఇప్పుడు ఏంటంటే డాటా డిలీట్ అయిపోయింది. we successfully deleted employee data. Like this we need to do post mapping. In today's class we discussed about post mapping, put mapping, get mapping and delete mapping. So ఏదైనా డౌట్ ఉందా? ఎనీ డౌట్ in today's class?